I posted a salary progression video on my Instagram and I shared how it went from $25,000 a year to $500,000 a year. And a lot of you had so many questions. So I figured might as well make a YouTube video and just explain how I got from there to here. I don't script my YouTube videos. I just sit down and talk to you like you're a friend. So if it doesn't flow perfectly, I'm sorry, but that's just the way I do my YouTube videos. Let's go back to the beginning. I graduated from the University of Georgia and I actually started studying pre med. But in my third year, I realized I kind of don't want to do this. I don't want to do pre med. I don't want to go into medical school. It's not the direction I want to go in, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I went to my advisor and they were like, oh, well, you have all of these credits. You can actually take public health and then, you won't lose out on a bunch of classes that you've taken. And because I was in my 20s and I don't know what I'm doing, I just listened to what people were telling me. I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and do that. So let's change my major from pre med to public health. My fourth year of public health, I had to do a internship or what do you call this? Essentially, I had to go to a hospital and I had to do some work for a diabetes center. And let me just tell you, I hated every moment of it. I vowed at that moment that I would never step foot in a hospital again, and this is not the place for me, and I don't want to be in a hospital. So you can imagine that I graduated feeling pretty disappointed. I didn't know what I wanted to do afterwards because I didn't really pick this degree. I just listened to what the advisor told me and I was really lost. I'm not even gonna front. I was feeling kind of depressed because my sister had actually studied economics because that's what she loved and she was able to find a job right away. And I couldn't. I couldn't because I didn't want to work with the degree I had. I don't know if people talk about this enough, but yeah, sometimes I feel like we push young people to pick a degree at an age where they have no idea what they even want to study. Because of all of that, I kind of had a little bit of a quarter life crisis and I decided that I'm going to leave America. Yeah, that was my solution to my problems. How can I get out of the United States because I did not want to be in the US anymore? So I did what any 20-year-old probably does. They go on Google and they search random stuff. And that's what I did. I literally went on Google and I said, how can I work abroad and leave the United States? A bunch of articles and blogs came up, of course, but one of the common themes was teaching English abroad. And that is what I ended up doing. From the moment I figured out about teaching English abroad to the moment I was on a plane was probably 3 months. And the way I found this job doesn't get any better. It sounds so sketchy right now when I think about it. There were job boards for people who wanted to teach English abroad, and I'm sure they exist even now. I can't remember the name. I haven't looked them up in a very long time, but I'm sure if you do some Google searches, you'll be able to find them. Basically, schools post on these job boards saying, hey, we're looking for English teachers. This is what we pay. This is what we can offer. And that is really where I found the job. I did a bunch of interviews with different schools, and the one that I ended up going with was a Korean school. It was in South Korea, it was in Seoul. And I really liked the woman that I talked to because she was Korean, but she also lived in the United States for a very long time. And we just clicked, and for some reason, I just trusted her. And that is why I decided to go with that school. And it's important to know that when you go to South Korea to teach English, 9 times out of 10, your visa will be tied to the school. So the school basically sponsors you to be there, which is not bad because then you don't have to deal with any of the legal stuff. They also give you a place to stay, or at least that's what happened to me. Like they give you a little studio apartment and they pay you a salary. I don't remember the exact salary, but I do believe it was around $2,000 a month, which at that time I looked at this whole thing as like an experience. I didn't care how much I was getting paid because my housing was covered and I was going to be in a foreign country and just living whatever life I wanted to live. I spent 1 year in Korea teaching at that specific school, and then after that I decided I'm going to go to Vietnam and teach there. I wanted to go to Vietnam specifically because it was in a location where it was closer to all of these other countries that I wanted to visit on my vacations, because South Korea is a little bit farther out. So anytime I wanted to travel, I would have to spend a lot of money to go to different countries. But in Vietnam, I could literally just hop over to the next country and check it out for even like a weekend, an extended weekend. So I packed my bags and I went to Vietnam. Now, Vietnam is very different from South Korea. South Korea is very organized. Vietnam is very messy. South Korea sponsors your visa when you're at a school. In Vietnam, it's not like that. You have to find the school. You have to find a job there, and your visa is not tied to the school you're teaching at. So when I got there, I actually didn't have a job lined up. I just stayed in a hostel and I went to different schools and I interviewed with different places. And I just ended up picking one international school that people, had really high reviews for. And honestly, It turned out fine. I want to say the salary was comparable. It was about $2,000 a month. However, you didn't get your own place. You had to find your own apartment. And so I ended up spending more in Vietnam overall. So I spent a year in Vietnam and then I decided to go to Bulgaria to visit my family. I was going to visit my family for a couple of months. And while I'm there, I'm just going to apply to different schools in Spain because that was going to be my next destination. But that is not what happened. So I get to Bulgaria, my parents are there, my aunts and uncles and everybody is there, and I start hanging out with my cousins, and I realize my language, my Bulgarian language, is kind of crap. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I should stay here a year and kind of fix my Bulgarian. I have nothing to lose. My parents have a house I can stay at. I don't really need a whole lot. Why not? I had literally nothing keeping me from doing it. And so I made the executive decision to stay in Bulgaria. But while I was there, I couldn't just not work. Okay, it's an entire year. I mean, my savings were dwindling because I was still spending money. So I thought, you know what? What a better way to immerse myself in this culture than to start working in Bulgaria. And so I did. I'm not gonna go too deep into the story, but I ended up working as an English babysitter for a questionable family in Bulgaria. Listen, the short story is this: I lasted a couple of months because when I saw what was happening behind the scenes, I was like, I kind of don't want to be associated with this family. But something awesome came out of that, and that is meeting my husband. I ended up meeting him on the job, and he wasn't working for the family, but he was at an event that I was at. Anyway, a whole different story. And you know, when you meet someone you really like, they kind of influence your choices of how long you're gonna stay there. You know, so I left the job and I was like, okay, I need to find something else to do. And I thought, well, I was an English teacher. Let me see if there's options to teach English online. And at that time, there was a company called VIP Kid, and I think they probably still have it. I don't know. But I started teaching English online through that company. The moment I would open my schedule, I would have kids just signing up left and right. I would work from morning until night, nonstop, for as long as I want. So for the first 2 years, I just worked as an English teacher through VIP Kid. And then I kind of started not getting bored, but I was like, I'm kind of stuck in this. I feel like I need to be doing something else. What other creative outlets can I do to kind of up level my skills? And so I started doing copywriting. And for anyone who doesn't know what copywriting is, it's basically sales writing. You write sales pages, you write ads, you can write stuff for social media that's targeted towards sales. I really just started on my own. There were a couple of courses that I probably took, but it wasn't professional training. I was just practicing over and over. And I started reaching out to different people and different clients to get opportunities. The number one way I was able to find clients was through Facebook groups. At that time, there were so many like virtual assistant groups. They probably even still have them. I say back then, like, you know, it was so long ago. But I just mean that I was in a lot of virtual assistant groups and people were constantly posting job opportunities. And I was submitting like, you know, my writing samples. I mean, like, I can help you with this, I can help you with that. I was charging so little that I'm sure people were like, yes, I'm gonna hire you, girl, because you're not charging anything. And so, long story short, for the next few years, that's what I did. I was teaching English online through the VIP Kit platform and also doing copywriting and marketing freelance services on the side. And I say I was making around $45,000 because that's what it said on my tax returns. I can't tell you the exact amounts I was charging for each project or exactly how much I was making, but that's just what my tax returns said. So that's what I say. Now we get to 2022, and I am incredibly bored from teaching English online. I am over it. I want out. And also the freelancing clients, they weren't enough to supplement my income because majority of it was from teaching English. So I decided, you know what? Maybe I should get a full-time job. And because at this point I had a lot of writing samples and I had worked with different freelancing clients, I had a lot of work behind me. And so I just created a portfolio with all my work, showing like the writing samples, what kind of results I've gotten for specific clients, things like that, right? And so I went on LinkedIn and I just started searching for jobs for like content marketing, copywriting, anything that was related to the things I had done. And at that time, there were a lot of jobs and I started applying left and right. I probably applied to like 50 different places, but one place reached out to me. They were a very small and new startup, and they had like a fertility app and a fertility thing where, you know, you can track your hormone levels so you can tell you when you're ovulating. That was their whole business. And I interviewed and I ended up getting the job. I was in Bulgaria at that point, but they actually didn't mind that because a lot of their software engineers were actually in Poland. So for them, it was fine. And I think it was fine because they were paying me very little. They were paying $54,000 a year. And you're probably like, oh my God, that is actually not that bad. But for being the only content marketer on the team, I think it was a low salary. And I know it was a low salary because even the person that hired me, she's like, yeah, we don't have a big budget right now. So hopefully this is okay. Now, when I think about it, it's funny. But at that time, I was like, oh my God, this is great. Love it. So we get to $54,000 a year, and I work exactly 3 months there. At the third month, I was like, this is such a dumpster fire. I cannot work here anymore. And it was just weird vibes. I don't know how to explain it to you, but it was just weird. I didn't like it. I was just like, you know what? This is not worth it to me. And also, coming from someone who was a freelancer and, having her own side business, I was like, this is kind of sucky. I don't like it. So I quit, but I didn't give up because I continued applying to different places. And the next month, the very next month, I got an interview for another job. This one was also with a startup, but they were a little bit bigger, a little more established, and they were actually a course creation platform. I'm not gonna say their name, but if you do some digging, I'm sure you can figure it out. They were also looking for a content marketer, and they hired me. The salary was $70,000 a year. And I was like, oh my God, within just 1 month, I increased my salary so much. However, the team that they hired me for was very much an experimental thing. Like, they were trying to set up this course platform. I'm not going to get into it, but I can very well sense that this was not profitable for them. And I didn't know how long I would be there. The month before we all got laid off, I remember telling one of my friends, like, girl, I'm not doing anything all day. Nothing. We have zero work. There's absolutely nothing to do. Why are they paying me? This cannot be right. And that was kind of like my sign that I don't think this is going to end well for me. And so a month later, they ended up laying off the entire team. But they were really, really great. Like, they gave us an amazing severance. They even let us keep our computer, which I didn't have a computer. You know what? Let me spill some tea here. So when they hired me, I was in Bulgaria, right? And they knew that. I said, hey, I'm in Bulgaria. I'm going to be here for a little bit of time, but then I want to come back to the US. And they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. That's fine. Just let us know when you come back here, and, we'll ship your laptop and all of that. In the meantime, you can work with your laptop. Keep in mind, this is a startup. It's not like a bank where everything's like highly regulated. You need 150 different passwords to log into a computer. No, no, no. They were just like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Just use your computer. Well, really, I can't even say that I had the intention of coming back to the US at that point. So, yeah, I was kind of working from Bulgaria for quite some time. But it doesn't matter. They laid me off. So, whatever. I didn't even get a computer because they couldn't ship it to me. So, I get laid off. And because I had 3 months of severance, I was trying to think, okay, now I have some money to hold me over. And also, at this point, I have experience from my freelancing clients. I have experience from that fertility startup, and now I have experience from this course creation startup. Let me put some stuff together to make some type of a portfolio so I can start applying to new jobs. So I spent 2 months literally digging in of how to create case studies and how to create my portfolio. So that way it's attracting the correct businesses. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos. I used Udemy's courses so I can learn how to do all of this stuff. Everything was just done by watching videos and then doing it. I was kind of tired of marketing. I didn't want to have another marketing job, and being a content marketer for the past two positions and also being a copywriter, I was like, oh man, what can I transition into? My sister was actually a product owner, and she worked in product for most of her career, and she loved it and she raved about it. So I started doing research of like, what positions can a marketer transition into product? And a position I found out about was content designer. And essentially, what a content designer does is write the words for products, applications, websites, software. Okay, so that's what a content designer does. And I'm like, well, I know how to write and I like software. Why can't I do it? I started creating my portfolio to be geared towards software and how I can write for software. Again, this took a bunch of just watching videos, seeing how other people do it, talking to other people. I signed up for like ADP list and I talked to a bunch of content designers who worked at different companies so they can give me feedback. It was a lot of effort on my part to figure out how to do this. So please don't think it's like I took one course and I figured it out. No, no, no. It was a bunch of research, a bunch of trial and error, a bunch of interviews, a bunch of applications, and a lot of them said no until one of them said yes. Christmas week, a recruiter reaches out to me and she's like, hey, Alex, I have this position that I'm looking to fill with a content designer. Is that something you'd be interested in? Let me know. And I'm over here thinking, why is this recruiter working the week of Christmas. Is this like a scam? But I was kind of desperate at that point, and I thought, you know what? It won't hurt to just reply to her. So I replied back to her. She's like, send me your resume, send me your portfolio. And because I had spent the last 2, 3 months working on that thing, I had it ready. So I sent it to her and I didn't hear back for a week. But then I heard back. She said they really like my resume, they really like my portfolio, and they would like to interview me. Keep in mind, I'm still in Bulgaria at that point, okay? But this was a job in the US. But our plan was to move to the US, so I was fine with like relocating if I found a job. So I have my first interview, they really like me. I have my second interview, they really like me. And I have my third interview, and they really like me. And they offer me the position. And I accept. I accepted around like January 5th, I wanna say. They wanted me to start working January 20th. Remember, I'm still in Bulgaria. I had 1 week to move from Bulgaria to the US. Would you do that? Because I did. Now, when I think about half this stuff, I'm like, am I crazy? My husband's visa was not approved yet, so he couldn't come with me. So I went by myself. I rented a studio apartment and I just said, you know what? We need this freaking job and we're gonna be moving to the US. Might as well one of us have a job here lined up and ready to go. Plus, that's gonna help us with our visa process. Okay, so around January 15th, I moved to the US, and the week after that, I start my new job. The job paid $60 an hour, but full time, and it's an hourly pay because I was a contractor. I didn't get any benefits. I was working full time for this company, it was a bank, but I didn't get any of the benefits, which honestly, I was like, whatever. The pay is so good. I didn't even care. My husband stayed in Bulgaria. He continued working his job. I was here in the US working this job. And around May 20th, I believe, he arrived in the US as well because his visa got approved, all of that jazz. The first contract that I got was for 6 months. And when the 6 months ended, I actually renegotiated my rate to $65 an hour. And so then I had another 6 months with the bank. However, I really wanted to find a job with benefits because I thought I deserved them. So while I'm working this contractor job, I'm also applying for full-time roles because you never know, something could come up. And something did come up. I was a part of the Slack group called Content and UX Writers. If you just search online for this, you will find it. It's a Slack group. And in that Slack group, there's a channel called Job Postings. And from time to time, people post jobs at their companies. And a job posting for Chicago came up. It was at another bank for the exact same position, except senior. So instead of content designer, it was a senior content designer. So I thought, you know what? Let me apply. I had zero, I mean, zero expectations. Hear me when I say I thought they would never even reach out to me, except they reached out to me only 2 hours later. Maybe that should have been my red flag because what do you mean? I've never even heard of that, but they reached out. I ended up getting an interview. I ended up having to do 4 interviews, but they really liked me and they offered me the job. Yay! The pay was not much different from the contractor position, but again, I got benefits. So, like health insurance, a bonus, all the regular benefits, 401k match. The salary was $125,000 a year. So, it was really fantastic. And it was with an even more reputable bank. So, that is how I ended up at $125,000 a year in 2023. But in 2023, I also had all of my student loans still left to pay, and we had bought a car because my husband's job was 40 minutes out of the city. So that was another $30,000 loan. So we were in about $65,000 of debt at that time, and I didn't really think too much about it. All of the interest rates were really low, so it wasn't like something I was stressed about or worried about. I just thought if we both work our jobs, it would be absolutely fine. At the end of that year, I was getting really bored with my work. The team I was on wasn't really that exciting. And I just decided, you know what? I've always wanted to post on social media. I've done social media content for other brands. I've done marketing for other brands. Why can't I just post on social media for myself? So I made the goal in 2024 to start posting on TikTok. And I created a bunch of different videos, but one went viral. And that was the one where I talked about how my husband and I are living with one salary and then using the other salary to pay off debt and invest. And that struck a chord with a lot of people, some really positive, some really negative. But when I saw that video doing really well, I immediately jumped on that. I started creating other content related to it. I started sharing my life of how I'm paying off the debt. And people really enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. And my videos kept going viral. And so I ultimately started making money from social media too. And during that time, a whole bunch of other stuff happened too. My husband was laid off from his job. I also ended up moving to a different team in the company. But none of those things really matter when it comes to the salary situation. So let's continue on. I started making money from views on TikTok, which is from the creator program, but also I started getting brand deals the more my page grew. And then I created a budgeting template because a lot of people were asking me, oh, how are you tracking all of your income, all of your expenses? I just created a budgeting template and I started selling it for, I think at that time it was like $6, $7. And I made money from it too. And I used every extra penny that I made to pay off all of the debt. And at the end of 2024, when we did our taxes and I had my full time job and also social media, we ended up making over $250,000 for 2024. In 2025, I continued working with my corporate job up until April. In April, I actually left my full time job because we made significant income in 2024. We paid off all of our debt and we saved enough for me to be able to take a sabbatical this year, meaning I can leave my corporate job and just give content creation an opportunity. And because it was so profitable, it didn't make any sense for me not to try it. I'm someone, as you can see from this whole journey, has always taken risks, calculated risks, I think, but always taken risks and they've always paid off. I am not tied to a full time job. Like, I don't want that to be my identity. I don't want that to be the thing that I am known for. And so, leaving a full time job to pursue something different or even change jobs this year into something even better is something that's totally worth it to me. But I understand that people have their opinions about this. So, they can have their opinions. That's all right. And so this year, my goal is to make $500,000 through my business, which is content creation, my budgeting template. I want to come out with other stuff, more to come on that. But in any case, this is my goal for this year. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but a girl can dream and a girl's gonna put it out into the universe because I truly believe that it can happen. And that, my friends, is how I went from $25,000 to where I am now. It was long, it was all over the place, but hopefully you were able to take some inspo from this. Maybe you're able to see that you don't have to stay in one place. Taking risks is actually really fun, of course. Do calculated risks. Please be smart about it. I don't know. I just see life as a big experiment. And to me, it's like, why not try different things? What's the point? 10 years from now when we look back and we're like, well, I just did the same thing over and over for 10 years. I don't want that. And I will see you next time. Bye.